Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
Drew had always carried himself with quiet strength, but on this particular day, the burden he bore was heavier than ever before. The truth he held in his hands could shatter the lives of those closest to him, and yet he could not turn back. He knew the evidence was real, undeniable, and now that Monica was gone, there was no way to confront her with it directly. Her passing had left a void in the lives of so many, particularly in the Quartermain family, and yet Drew had uncovered a dark piece of her past that could not remain hidden any longer. He replayed the events in his mind, recalling how he had stumbled across a sealed envelope that Monica had left behind, tucked away in the safe at the Quartermain mansion. Inside was a flash drive, a typed confession, and old photographs that painted a chilling picture. It was the kind of revelation no one would ever expect from the matriarch who had spent decades holding the family together, the woman who always seemed to know what was best for everyone else. The room was still when Drew sat down with the envelope spread across the desk. He could almost hear Monica's voice, her stern but loving tone, telling him to think carefully before opening doors that could never be closed. The words in her letter echoed in his mind. She admitted that many years ago, in a moment of fear and confusion, she had pulled a trigger. That gunshot had struck him, and though circumstances had changed and decades had gone by, the guilt had stayed with her until her final days. Drew pressed his hands together, overwhelmed by the swirl of emotions. Monica had always been a protector, someone who fought for her children, her family, and for the hospital she had dedicated her life to. But now, he had to face the reality that the woman he had trusted had once caused him harm in the most literal way. The thought of bringing this to light terrified him. How would the family react? How would Jason, if he were still here, process such a betrayal? How would Sam, Michael, Ned, and the rest of the Quartermains respond to learning that Monica had carried such a devastating secret? Drew didn't want to be the one to tarnish Monica's legacy, yet the evidence was irrefutable. It was not just words written in her hand, it was forensic proof, with old medical reports and photographs that corroborated the story. He could feel the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. The Quartermain family had been through scandal after scandal, secret after secret, and yet this one felt different. It was deeply personal, tied to the very foundation of who they were as a family, and it touched Drew's soul in a way that made every breath heavy with guilt and sorrow. Drew tried to remember the night it must have happened, but his memories were clouded. His time being held captive, the confusion of his identity being swapped with Jason's, and the trauma of returning to Port Charles had left gaps in his past. For so long, he had wondered about certain scars on his body, the unexplained fragments of pain he could never account for. Now he realized the answer had been buried in Monica's conscience all along. She had hidden the truth from him, perhaps to protect him, or perhaps to protect herself and her family. Drew leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, wishing there was a way to ask her directly, to hear her side of the story beyond the words she had left behind. But Monica was gone, and the silence that followed her death made the secret all the more haunting. The first person Drew considered telling was Sam. She had been his partner, his confidant, and though they were no longer together, he trusted her to understand the gravity of the situation. He imagined sitting her down, sliding the evidence across the table, and watching her eyes widen with disbelief. Would she think he was exaggerating? Would she believe that Monica, of all people, could have been capable of pulling that trigger? Drew knew Sam respected Monica, just as so many did, and revealing this truth would hurt her just as deeply as it hurt him. But he could not keep it hidden forever. The Quartermains deserved to know the truth, and Monica's legacy deserved to be understood in its entirety, even if it meant reshaping the way they all remembered her. As the hours ticked by, Drew found himself replaying conversations he'd had with Monica over the years. She had always spoken to him with kindness, always encouraged him to embrace his place in the family. She had given him advice about Scout, about life, about forgiving himself for the choices he regretted. Had those words come from guilt? Was her kindness rooted in a need to atone for the night she had shot him? The thought was unbearable. He didn't want to believe that her love had been a mask, yet the evidence suggested that beneath her steady exterior, she had been carrying a darkness he never knew existed. Drew closed the envelope and shoved it back into the drawer, but the knowledge gnawed at him. He couldn't pretend it didn't exist. His conscience wouldn't allow him to. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Monica herself had wanted him to know. That was why she had left the letter, the evidence, the confession. She hadn't wanted to take the secret to her grave, even though her death had sealed her lips forever. She had left it for him to decide, for him to be the one to carry her truth into the light or bury it in the dark forever. That responsibility made Drew's hands shake, his pulse pound in his ears, and his stomach twist with nausea. He had faced war zones, captivity, betrayal, and heartbreak, but this was different. This was family. This was love entwined with betrayal, trust shattered by the truth. As night fell over Port Charles, Drew stood by the window of the Quartermain mansion, staring out at the sprawling estate Monica had loved so much. He thought of the memories they had all shared in that house, Thanksgiving dinners filled with chaos, Christmas mornings where Monica tried to keep the peace, arguments over ELQ and family loyalty. She had been the anchor of it all, the heart that kept them from completely falling apart. And yet, her final act had been to reveal the one thing that could break them. Drew closed his eyes and whispered her name, a mixture of love and grief tightening his throat. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for certain, the truth could not remain hidden forever, no matter how much it hurt. The morning after his discovery, Drew could hardly sleep. He tossed and turned, Monica's words echoing in his mind like a haunting melody that refused to fade. By the time the sun rose over Port Charles, he had already made the decision to begin confiding in someone he trusted. He needed perspective before he unraveled everything. He reached for his phone, scrolling through contacts, his finger hesitating over Sam's name. It felt instinctive to go to her, but he paused. Their history was complicated. He didn't want her to see this as him dragging her back into his world. Instead, his finger landed on Dante's number. Dante had become something of a sounding board in recent years, someone who understood loyalty, betrayal, and the blurred lines between family and justice. Drew dialed, and when Dante answered, there was a steadiness in his voice that immediately grounded him. "Meet me at the docks," Drew said simply, his voice low and strained. Dante didn't ask questions, just agreed, which was exactly what Drew needed. Within the hour, the two men stood facing each other by the water, the crisp air biting at their skin. Drew pulled the envelope from his jacket and handed it to Dante. For several moments, neither man spoke. Dante opened it slowly, scanning the contents, his eyes narrowing as he took in Monica's words. When he finally looked up, his expression was a mix of disbelief and sorrow. This is heavy," Dante admitted. "Are you sure you want this out? Monica's gone. There's no one to question, no one to defend herself." Drew nodded, his jaw tight. "I know. But she wanted me to know. She left this for me to find. She wanted the truth out, even if she couldn't say it herself." Dante rubbed the back of his neck, pacing slightly. "You realize what this means for the Quartermains, right? For everyone who loved her? This isn't just about you, Drew. This could rewrite how everyone remembers Monica. Do you want that on your conscience?" Drew's chest tightened. That was the question that had plagued him all night. But no matter how he turned it in his mind, the answer always came back the same. "I don't get to choose the truth. I only get to choose whether I bury it or not. And if I bury it, then I'm no better than all the people who've lied to me before." Dante respected that. He didn't push further, but the look in his eyes told Drew he knew how explosive this revelation would be. He handed the envelope back, and Drew tucked it close to his chest like a shield. Later that day, Drew returned to the mansion. The Quartermains were already gathering in the living room, sharing stories of Monica, laughing and crying in equal measure. Ned was pouring drinks, Olivia was trying to keep things light, Brooklyn hovered nearby, and Michael sat quietly with Willow, his hand clasping hers. The sight of them all together, clinging to their memories of Monica, made Drew hesitate. How could he stand here, among the laughter and the tears, and drop a truth so devastating that it could fracture everything? He lingered in the doorway, unseen for a moment, listening to their voices fill the room. For a brief second, he considered turning around, hiding the evidence again, and pretending none of it existed. But his feet betrayed him, carrying him into the room. Everyone turned to look at him. Their faces softened, offering him warmth and comfort, but Drew couldn't return the expression. He felt heavy, as though the truth had already been spoken aloud. Michael was the first to notice his unease. "You okay, Drew?" Michael asked gently. Drew swallowed hard. "I found something. Something Monica left behind." The room went silent. Glasses were set down, conversations halted, and every pair of eyes turned toward him. Olivia stepped closer, her expression wary. "What do you mean, something she left behind?" Drew hesitated, gripping the envelope tightly. He didn't want to just blurt it out. This wasn't the kind of truth you threw into the air like casual conversation. It's evidence. A confession. About something that happened years ago. Something Monica did. To me. The tension in the room shifted instantly. Confusion rippled across their faces. Brooklyn crossed her arms, frowning. "What are you talking about?" "Monica adored you." Drew took a deep breath, forcing the words past his lips. "She shot me. Years ago. I didn't know. I didn't remember. But she confessed. She left the evidence behind, and there's no denying it anymore." Gasps erupted. Olivia covered her mouth, Ned's eyes went wide, and Michael shook his head as though he couldn't process what he was hearing. Willow's hand tightened on Michael's, trying to ground him. Brooklyn's voice trembled with disbelief. "That's impossible. Monica wouldn't, she couldn't." Drew set the envelope on the coffee table. "It's all here. Her words. Her proof. She admitted it. She carried the guilt with her until the day she died." Silence fell again, heavier this time, suffocating. Michael finally reached for the envelope, his hands trembling slightly as he pulled out the letter. He read it slowly, his eyes widening as the truth sank in. When he finished, he dropped the papers as though they burned him. I can't believe this," Michael whispered. "She was our rock. She saved lives every single day. And now this?" Ned ran a hand through his hair, pacing across the room. "Why would she do this? Why would she carry this and not tell us sooner?" "Because she loved us," Olivia whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. "Because she didn't want us to see her differently." The room descended into murmurs and fragmented sentences, everyone trying to grapple with the revelation. Drew stood still, his heart pounding, unsure if he had made the right decision. He knew the truth mattered, but watching the family crumble under the weight of it was almost too much to bear. Brooklyn finally spoke, her voice sharp with emotion. "So what now, Drew? What do you want us to do with this? Sit here and rewrite Monica's whole life because of one mistake? Or do you want us to erase every good thing she ever did just because of this?" Drew's throat tightened. "I don't want to erase anything. I just want the truth to matter. Monica left this for me, and I think it's because she wanted us to understand her fully. Not just the parts we admired, but the parts she regretted too." For a long time, no one responded. The family sat in stunned silence, their grief and disbelief intertwining until it was impossible to tell which weighed more heavily. Drew knew this was only the beginning. The truth was out now, and there was no turning back. The weight of the revelation lingered in the mansion like a fog that no one could push away. After Drew's confession, the Quartermains scattered into their own corners of the house, retreating from each other as they processed what they had just learned. Drew sat alone in the study, his elbows resting on his knees, staring at the fire that flickered in the hearth. He wondered if Monica had ever sat here, in this very chair, replaying the memory of that night, grappling with her guilt the way he was grappling with her truth now. He imagined her holding the same glass of bourbon that Ned had abandoned earlier, staring into the flames as if searching for absolution. He barely noticed when Michael walked in. Michael's face was pale, his eyes hollow with shock, but there was a firmness in his jaw. He closed the door quietly behind him and sat across from Drew, leaning forward. "You've been through hell," Michael said softly. "More than anyone should. But this, Drew, are you absolutely sure this isn't a mistake? Maybe Monica was confused, maybe she wrote it down wrong. You know how people get near the end. Maybe she wasn't in her right mind. Drew shook his head slowly. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to find any excuse to say she didn't mean it. But the evidence isn't just her words, Michael. There are reports, records, even photos. It all matches. She wasn't confused. She knew exactly what she was admitting. Michael leaned back, running a hand down his face. Then I don't know how to reconcile this. How do we put this together with the woman who raised us, who guided us, who saved countless lives at GH? How do we carry both versions of her at the same time? Drew sighed. Maybe that's the point. Maybe she wanted us to see her whole, not just the perfect version we've painted in our minds. Maybe she needed us to understand that even heroes make mistakes, sometimes unforgivable ones. The conversation was interrupted by Brooklyn barging into the room, her cheeks flushed with anger. You have no right to do this, Drew, she snapped, her voice trembling. She's dead. She can't defend herself. And you come in here with your evidence and your accusations like you're the judge, jury, and executioner. Drew stood slowly, meeting her glare. This isn't about judging her, Brooklyn. This is about the truth. The truth, she repeated bitterly. The truth is that Monica was the only person who held this family together when everyone else was tearing it apart. She loved you, Drew. She treated you like a son. And now you want us to believe she shot you? Do you even hear how insane that sounds? Michael rose to his feet, trying to calm her. Brooklyn. No, Michael, she shouted, cutting him off. I won't let this stand. He's wrong. Or lying. Or maybe he's just confused. But I won't let Monica's memory be dragged through the mud like this. Her words cut deep, but Drew didn't flinch. He understood her anger. If he hadn't seen the evidence himself, he might have reacted the same way. But knowing the truth left no room for denial. You think I wanted this? Drew asked quietly. You think I wanted to be the one to bring this down on all of you? I loved Monica too. She was my family. But she made sure I found this. She made sure I knew. You can hate me for it, but don't pretend this isn't real. Brooklyn's eyes filled with tears, but her fury burned through them. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving a trail of silence in her wake. Michael exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair. This is tearing us apart already. And we've only just heard it. Secrets always do, Drew murmured. Elsewhere in the mansion, Ned and Olivia sat in the parlor, their voices hushed but strained. Olivia was crying softly, her hand clutching Ned's. I can't make sense of this. Monica wasn't violent. She wasn't reckless. There has to be more to the story. Maybe she was protecting someone. Maybe she thought she was defending herself. Ned stared into the distance, his expression grim. Or maybe she made a mistake she couldn't undo. And she lived with it every day of her life. Olivia shook her head. But to keep it hidden for so long? To let Drew walk around not knowing? That doesn't sound like Monica. Doesn't it? Ned asked quietly. How many secrets have the Quartermaines buried over the years? How many times have we chosen silence over honesty? Maybe Monica just followed the family pattern. The weight of his words silenced them both. Later that evening, Willow found Drew in the study again. She slipped inside quietly, her presence calm but purposeful. I wanted to thank you, she said softly. Drew blinked, surprised. Thank me? For what? For telling us. For not hiding it. Willow's eyes were gentle but filled with sadness. I don't know how everyone else will handle this, but I believe Monica wanted you to share it. And I think it's important we honor her by hearing her truth, even if it hurts. Her words eased some of the pressure in Drew's chest. Finally, someone understood. I just wish it didn't feel like I was betraying her, Drew admitted. You're not, Willow said firmly. She betrayed herself by holding it in for so long. You're setting her free. For the first time in days, Drew felt a glimmer of relief. But he also knew Willow's kindness wouldn't be enough to heal the fractures forming in the family. Brooke Lynn's anger would fester. Michael's confusion would deepen. Ned's pragmatism would eventually clash with Olivia's denial. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Drew would have to stand firm, carrying the burden Monica had passed to him. That night, Drew dreamed of Monica. In the dream, she was sitting by the fire, wearing her familiar cardigan, her expression both stern and tender. She looked at him with eyes that held centuries of wisdom and pain. You were always stronger than you knew, she said softly. That's why I left it to you. Because you would carry it, even when it broke you. When Drew awoke, his pillow was damp with tears. He sat up slowly, the dream lingering in his mind like an echo. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew this was only the beginning of the storm Monica's truth had unleashed. The days following Drew's revelation stretched like years for the Quartermain family. The mansion, usually buzzing with chaos, arguments, and laughter, grew quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Even when voices filled the rooms, there was a hesitation behind them, as if everyone was walking on fragile ground that could crack beneath their feet at any moment. Monica's memory had become a battleground. Half of the family clung to the woman they knew, while the other half wrestled with the woman described in her confession. Drew felt the distance most keenly. Each time he entered a room, conversations would stall. Some avoided his gaze altogether, while others studied him with a mixture of pity and suspicion. He didn't blame them. He had detonated a truth bomb that had shattered their foundation. Still, he couldn't help but feel more isolated than ever, as though the very family Monica had wanted him to belong to was pushing him to the edges once again. It was Michael who finally called for a family meeting. He gathered them all in the living room, the same space where Drew had dropped the bombshell days before. The atmosphere was tense, emotions raw, but Michael's voice was steady as he addressed them. We can't keep tearing ourselves apart like this, he began. Monica wanted us to know the truth, and now we do. But the question is, what do we do with it? Brooke Lynn immediately jumped in, arms folded across her chest, her expression defiant. We do nothing. We let it go. We remember her for who she was to us, not for one mistake she made decades ago. Ned shook his head, his tone sharp. It's not that simple, Brooke Lynn. This isn't just some rumor we can sweep under the rug. Monica left behind a confession and hard evidence. Ignoring it doesn't erase it. Olivia's eyes brimmed with tears as she clutched Ned's hand. But do we really want to tarnish her memory like this? She's gone, Ned. Nothing we do will change what happened. If we drag this out, if we keep talking about it, it'll destroy every good thing she gave us. Maybe destruction is what we need, Drew said quietly from his seat near the fire. The family turned to him, some with anger, others with confusion. He met their stares without flinching. Secrets are poison. Monica knew that better than anyone. That's why she left the truth behind. She wanted us to stop pretending everything in this family is perfect. If we bury this, then we keep the cycle going. Lies, half-truths, cover-ups, that's what the Quartermains are famous for. But maybe we don't have to be. His words hit like stones thrown into water, creating ripples across the room. For a long moment, no one responded. Then Willow spoke up, her voice calm but firm. Drew's right. We can't erase this. But we can choose how we carry it. Monica wasn't perfect, none of us are. Maybe it's not about condemning her or worshipping her. Maybe it's about accepting that she was human, just like the rest of us. Brooke Lynn scoffed. That's easy for you to say. You didn't grow up in this house. You didn't know what Monica meant to us. She was the glue that kept this family together. And maybe that's why she confessed, Willow replied softly. Because even the glue had cracks. The words silenced Brooke Lynn, though the anger in her eyes didn't fade. Dante, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Look, I've seen what secrets do to families. I've seen what denial does too. If you want my 2 cents, the only way forward is honesty. You don't have to announce it to the world, but within these walls, you need to accept the truth. All of it. The good and the bad. Otherwise, you'll never move past this. The room grew quiet again as his words sank in. One by one, the family members began to shift, their defenses lowering, their grief surfacing. Ned was the first to nod, his voice heavy with resignation. Maybe he's right. Maybe this isn't about protecting Monica's reputation. Maybe it's about protecting ourselves from the weight of lies we've all carried for too long. Olivia squeezed his hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't want to remember her this way. Drew leaned forward. Then don't. Remember the woman who loved you, who saved lives, who stood by this family through everything. But also remember that she was human. She made mistakes. She carried guilt. That doesn't erase her love. It doesn't erase her legacy. Brooklyn looked away, her jaw clenched, but the fight in her seemed to weaken. Michael, still holding Willow's hand, finally broke the silence. I think we owe it to Monica to remember all of her, the parts that inspired us, and the parts that remind us she wasn't flawless. We can honor her without pretending she was perfect. Slowly, the tension in the room began to ease. It wasn't resolution, not fully, but it was a step. For the first time since Drew had revealed the evidence, the family seemed united in something other than shock or anger. That night, Drew returned to the study once again. He opened the drawer where he had hidden Monica's envelope and pulled it out. He held it in his hands for a long moment, staring at the neat handwriting on the letter, the faded photographs, the cold hard evidence. Then he set it back inside and closed the drawer. He realized the evidence no longer needed to sit like a weapon waiting to explode. The family had heard the truth. The burden wasn't his alone anymore. As he stood by the window, looking out at the night sky above the Quartermain estate, Drew whispered softly, I did what you asked, Monica. I told them. I hope that's enough. In that moment, he felt lighter, not free, not healed, but lighter. Monica's truth had been spoken, her secret no longer festering in the dark. It wouldn't be easy for the Quartermains to carry it, but they would. Because that was what families did. They carried the weight of love and betrayal, of triumph and regret, of truth and lies. And as the fire crackled behind him, Drew finally allowed himself to believe that, in her own way, Monica had left them all a final gift. Not just the confession of her mistake, but the chance to break free from the chains of silence and finally face the messy, complicated reality of being a Quartermain.